If you guys want, I just wanted to introduce you briefly over here. I'm going to introduce the ones that are not on the stage, and that's just because we have so much content to go through over the next 4 hours that it's unbelievable. No, just stand right here a second. Yep. So first of all, I have here the publisher of a newspaper in Philadelphia. Well, right, because it's changed. Yeah, it has to have a So Al Dia Media Company, news media, over here. Hernan Huaracao, by the way. Jocelyn Campos Ramos, mommy of multiples. My God, you are impossible to talk about in one because this woman is an uber entrepreneur. She writes for magazines, she writes for newspapers, she's had an iBlog radio, but she's also known as Mommy Innovative Media. So I'm very thrilled to have her here personally. And then here we have Juan Guillen. He publishes a magazine, but he does much more. He has another platform, which is a Latino Trends event as well, a Latin Trends, and he is in New York. So we're going to hear from them shortly. In the meantime, for this part of the session, and we can take a quick photo afterwards, but okay, go ahead. There we go. We have very dedicated photographers. Thank you very much, Anna. Yeah, there we go. All right, so this is part one, and I'm a former reporter myself, so just so you know, my background, we'll go over it later on. We're not gonna dig deep into our backgrounds right now. We just want to tell you who we are. But my background is also, I'm a former reporter. I started off as a print reporter at the Miami Herald, writing about crime. Long story. Everybody in this panel today has been a full-time journalist at some point or another, either in TV or in print or both, and has some terrific stories. This part is not about their story. This part is about the reality of being a media entrepreneur, because it's really good and helpful for you to understand the sacrifice that it takes to be a media entrepreneur. It sounds sexy on paper, but it's scary as hell work. And I know these women that are on this panel very well, some better than others, and I know the sacrifices that they've made. Sometimes we've had calls. I think Jeanette and I were chatting last week. Was it at 1 in the morning? I don't remember when. I think it felt like it was late. It was very, very late. And we're exchanging emails. And it's not because we just like to be awake late. It's because we physically had to get some things done to make our lives continue and, provide for our families. So I'm very delighted. I'm very honored to have these women on this panel and these folks over here as well, because being an entrepreneur is an incredible sacrifice. It's very rewarding, but it's also very taxing. And I think that the best thing that we can do to start this boot camp is to actually give you a little bit of a snapshot from them each, describing the work of being a media entrepreneur, just from the perspective not of their business, but like their habits and the things that they kind of have to go through for that. And then part two is a very big topic, which is present for most of us that have been journalists, and that is the ethics of starting your business after having been a journalist. Because one of the number one concerns that a lot of us have as journalists is maintaining certain standards and ethics. And there's a misconception that you can't be a journalist and be ethical when you become a media entrepreneur. And so we want to kind of help you understand how we navigate through that in our personal choices of who we align with and what we work with, etc. So I want to kick off Jeanette. With Jeanette, and actually I would like for each of them just to briefly tell you their names so you know who they are, and then Jeanette, I'm going to address the first question to you, but Jeanette, go ahead and tell us your name, or just the name, not the whole bio.
My name is Janet Caplun, and I represent Chile. No.
Okay, Chile, that's right.
No, Chile, Miami, Texas, whatever. It all depends on the time of the year. And American Airlines too, my kids would say. Okay, Manny, you want to start?
So, no, and Jeanette Caplun, Hispana Global.
Oh, yeah, but you said only my
Oh,
name.
no, we want to know, what's the name of your company? What's the name of your
No,
company?
my company is Hispana Global, and formerly I also co-founded another company called Todo Bebé. I was the chief content officer for 13 years. And previously, when I started out as a journalist, I started as a news reporter in Chile for TV. And then I hosted a TV show on the Discovery Channel called Vida en Línea for 4 years.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeanette. Gabby.
Hola todo el mundo. My name is Gaby Natale. My company's name is Super Latina Aganar Media. Before starting my company, I used to be a news anchor at Univision, correspondent, border correspondent in TV Azteca, and Washington correspondent freelance. Nowadays, my company develops not only TV shows, but also something that we're going to talk about later in the afternoon, listening to the demand from my clients. We developed a media and marketing company called Aganar Media. So that's the basics on my background, and later we're going to talk about the story of my company.
Excellent. And the next person is you, Veronica. Veronica is a former president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. She has a very unique perspective as the publisher of Media Moves, which she'll tell you about. There we go. Oh, wait.
You have to move the tab.
We'll do it.
Go mouse and just click on the tab right out. It's ready. So I'm Veronica Villafañe. As Manny pointed out, I'm a former president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. I've been a journalist for many, many years in television. I started out on Univision. I've worked for Telemundo, CNN en Español, Fox 11 News in Los Angeles. I've done both English and Spanish, and I've also worked online. And I founded a blog called Media Moves in 2007, which I then converted into a full-blown website with a redesign in 2011. I'm also currently the web editor for the West Coast for Impremedia, which is the parent company of La Opinión, a newspaper in Los Angeles and El Diario in New York. I'll be talking a little bit about Media Moves. Basically, just very briefly, Media Moves was born out of, I was looking at all the trades, and I noticed that there was never anything covered really about Latinos who work in the media. And so I decided to do that. I decided to do that as a blog, and then eventually it has become a very, very popular website, and lots of people want to be in it. Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least is a dear friend who I could tell you that if you.
No, it's not last but not least. There's two.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Oh, Teresa, I'm sorry. You know what? You're blocking here, so I only saw Kathy's hair. Teresa, I'm sorry. Teresa is also a very distinguished former journalist. She's still a journalist. She's always a journalist. You're always a journalist, by the way. How about that? You're always a journalist somehow.
Exactly.
Teresa from Checa la Movie, but Teresa, tell us more.
Yeah.
I stole.
Yeah, my name is Teresa Garza, and I'm the founder and editor of checkalamovie.net, like Manny say. And yeah, I'm agree with him. I'm a blogger now, but my background is in journalist. So I'm going to be a journalist for the rest of my life. That's the main point. I used to work for NBC Telemundo. I started as a backup for weather, sports anchor, reporter, anchor. I moved to Reno as a news director there. I moved to LA, and from there was a point that I started like, okay, this is the time that I should start something for myself. If I've been applying all the knowledge, and we're working on checkalamovie.net right now. Okay.
Okay, and then another good friend of mine, Kathy Cano Murillo, just an incredible entrepreneur. She is, I don't even know if she's really got a double somewhere. She's got to have a clone, right? Right, Jeanette? This woman is crazy, unbelievably talented, everything, just like everybody here, but she's like unbelievable. So, Kathy, how can you describe yourself shortly?
Well, Kathy Conamudio, my site is craftychica.com. I spent 13 years at the Arizona Republic starting as a tear sheet clerk, moved up to a newsroom clerk, moved up to full-time reporter, and then syndicated columnist. And then I left in 2008 and took all my favorite aspects of my job in all of those roles and used them to have a bigger, more personal sense of purpose with craftychica.com, where I could take all of my favorite story ideas and deliver them through a website every single day and be my own editor and writer and photographer and graphic designer
And author. She's written,
and sales director.
and she's written numerous books, and she has, well, she's going to tell you her story later. I don't want to steal thunder. What I'd really like to focus on this first part of our day is, I want to ask each of you to answer this question. First of all, is what has been the hardest, just in terms of the sacrifice part of starting your media, your media company? What has been the hardest part for you? Try to scare the crap out of them, by the way. Like really, because they need to hear it for real.
Okay.
Jeanette.
Well, I've started a media company twice. First, I started Todo Bebé, but it was very different because I didn't have any children. So when I stayed up all night, at some point I could catch up, and I didn't really have to be nice or be coherent during the day sometimes when I had spent the whole week designing or coding, because that was in the dark ages of the internet in 1999. Now, when I started Hispana Global a year and a half ago, I'm a mom. So I have two kids that rely on me not only to provide for them, but also to take care of their emotional well-being, to be there for them. And that, I would say, is the biggest cost, because I'm not willing to sacrifice my family. So many times as a media entrepreneur, you sacrifice yourself because you would rather not sleep to get the job done, to be able to launch the site, to meet a client deliverable, to be able to pitch. But that means that there's a hidden cost. You might think that you can go on caffeine forever, and that doesn't work out that way. You need to take care of yourself. So that, I would say, is the hardest part, realizing that if you don't take care of yourself, at some point you're going to burn out. And if you're your own everything, as Kathy was mentioning, if you get sick, everything goes down. I mean, there's nobody there as backup. You don't have a sales team that will step in to maybe give you a hand. Nobody's going to write for you a post because you're sick. I mean, it's all on you. So it's great that all is on you because you have independence, you have freedom. But on the other hand, if you don't take care of yourself, it's very risky, because at some point, something's got to give. And you have to learn to set boundaries, because you could go on 24/7, like Manny sometimes does.
No, I do not recommend it.
And I do that too. And there's always a cost involved. So it's not to scare you, but
Teresa, you relate to that because my God, Teresa, chime in on that.
Definitely. Yeah, the thing is that since I blog about entertainment and I have the opportunity, living in LA, you have the opportunity to interview a lot of actors and everything. So people see your social media, Facebook or Twitter and everything, and they think that, you're rich and famous.
The glamorous life.
Exactly. So the other side is that we really have to work hard. It's when I go to cover a press conference, okay, you work on that, then you come back, you have to edit, you have to write. My children, they're already grown. One of them living in New York and the other one lives in Texas. So the point is that people don't see what is behind what we're doing. They just see like, oh my God, I wish I were you. Okay, you have a picture with Johnny Depp, you interview him. But that's something that, it's really fun and everything. But they don't see the other part, that we're really human beings. We miss our people. We have to work really hard, and but it's worth it. I mean, it's of course the other thing is that working for like a TV station, like as I mentioned, of course you miss your check like every yeah, that's true. That's one of the things. So when you start something like this, you have to be patient. It's going to take a while. It's not going to Your life is not going to change from one day to another one, but it's worth it, basically.
Gabby, go ahead.
For me, talking about sacrifices and also changing your mind had to do a lot with the financials. Because to be honest, when you have, like she said, a check, maybe you can plan and you can say, okay, on that date, I'm going to have my vacations or my holidays. And when you have your own business, you have always in the back of your mind, like this money could be something fun, or I could reinvest it to make more money. So this could be my holidays, or this could be an upgrade to my studio. This could be changing my car, or
wow.
this could be having, somebody else help me as an employee. So I think one of the things that changed in me is the way I see and perceive money, because I truly believe that to make more money, you have to invest it. And there is where the sacrifices come, because maybe you have to skip those holidays, not change your car in the beginning, and think about what are going to be really the priorities. If you want this business to succeed, I believe you have to make it a priority, not only in time, but also financially. To take it to the next level, you're going to have to invest it, and you're going to have to ask yourself very honestly how comfortable I feel with this, how much I want that break of a fun thing, or if I can delay the satisfaction because I can see at the end of the road that this is going to take me somewhere. And so that is something that completely changed when I started my company, how I perceive money and the sacrifices that nobody is imposing me. I choose to make to take my company to the next level.
Very good. Oh my God. Okay. Veronica, you have a very unique perspective too, given that you're probably in touch with as many journalists as anybody here, because that's your life. You write about us. What are the things that you hear from journalists besides yourself? You are an entrepreneur, but you're on the front lines there. You're seeing the layoffs. You're hearing the concerns. What's your thought on that?
Well, that's one of the things about the turn in the industry, in the media industry, has left a lot of people that have been laid off, but they still want to be able to practice their craft. And what do you do if you're a journalist and you still want to be a journalist and you can't work at the LA Times, or you can't work at Univision, or you can't work at NBC? The reality, there's some positives and negatives about these changes. And one of the things is that the barriers to entry to doing your own platform have significantly reduced. They're almost next to nothing. In terms of what you need to do, you can get on, WordPress, Drupal. You have all these content management systems, which sometimes are free. All it takes is making a minimum investment in getting your URL, your hosting, etc. Because I definitely wouldn't recommend you doing on a free platform, so that you can have ultimate control. But there is a venue. Now the problem with this is that, okay, it's not just about creating content, because you can create the content, but the question is, how do you monetize it? And that's a $1 million question, and I'm sure that's the reason why a lot of you are here today. See what you can try and figure out. But it's not just about creating; it's about monetizing, because you can have the best product, but if you can't monetize it, unless you're doing it for the love of the art, and it's a side gig. But if you really want to do it as a business, there's so many other things that we're going to be talking about during the day that you're going to need to focus on, and it's just like Kathy mentioned, that she's the designer. I did too. When I did my site, I did it on WordPress, but I bought a template and then I fixed it, and I was like, okay, how do I do? I want to take these arrows out, and I went into a forum, because it's like, can you afford to pay somebody else? So I would go into a forum and say, how do I do this? And I was doing code. Don't ask me to do it again, because I don't remember. But it's kind of like you learn on the road. You become not just a creator, you become a developer, you become a promoter, a marketing. There's so many different hats that you need to make. And one of the things is business development and sales. And that's really the hardest line for a lot of the journalists.
Very
It's really
hard.
how
Yeah.
can you monetize, because you know, well, I know how to produce a content, but I don't know how to sell it. And that's really the biggest, that's the biggest issue today, because I mean, anybody can go ahead and start a blog or a website, a platform, but how, first of all, how do you get people to know that it's there? And then how do you monetize it? Those are the two biggest challenges of any media entrepreneur. But basically, that's what it is. It's like people want to be able, a lot of journalists want to be able to continue their craft. It's just how can they do it on their own? Do it as it's a sustainable journalism model.
Kathy, one thing that Veronica brought up that I think I'd like you to dig deeper into. In my experience, I have been able to make more money by being able to learn new skills. I think one of the hardest things, especially the older the journalist, the harder it is for us to have some of the skills that are kind of built in now into middle school and even elementary school, you know, in terms of digital. Kathy, you've had to learn a lot of brand new skills to become the media entrepreneur that you are.
Well,
what are they? I mean,
Well, the
tell us
biggest
everything
thing
you know.
is being crafty. It's also looking for crafty ways to monetize. And what I did for my site when I left the paper was I actually found an investor or a sponsor, so to say, to pay for my salary. Actually, it ended up being double my newspaper salary to run Crafty Chica full time. And so with that, it relieved the pressure of having to always worry about monetizing. But on the other end of it, that put a big burden of responsibility on me to create daily content. And the biggest reality check for me was managing opportunity, because I loved my job at the paper. I had a lot of contacts. And when I left, all of those contacts were so excited to help me with Crafty Chica that I was getting pitches everywhere. And I had to come to the realization that I was not the Arizona Republic feature section anymore. I was one person. This was craftychica.com. I had to go through all of those and say no to a lot of them and pass them on to other people or other bloggers. And that was the hardest thing, was letting go of some opportunities because they didn't fit. I ultimately said, just like the newspaper, I have to have my own mission statement, and everything that I choose to do on my site has to support that mission statement. And that was one of the biggest things, was, you know, first taking on all these assignments thinking I'm going to compete with the paper and show them I can do it myself. And then
I'm going to get them
was
back
like,
for laying me off.
yeah, well, I didn't get laid off. That was a
cutting
good
my
thing.
hours or something.
It was right before they had all of the layoffs, and but you know what the problem was that it wasn't me getting a story assignment, turning it into my editor, and then going through the copy desk, and then the art director choosing the photo. No, I had to lay out my story idea plans. I had to pick out what would be my lead story. I had to take my own pictures. I had to be my own copy editor, which in the early days of my blog, while I was still at the paper, it was late at night and I didn't worry about grammar or punctuation because I didn't think anyone was reading it. And so once it got bigger, I had to go back and fix all of those little things very fast. You can still find some on there. But that was the biggest thing, was really, you know, learning how to be a photographer. And, you know, some of the photographers at the newspaper that said, oh, I'll help you. I'm like, where are you? You said you'd help me. Well, they're hustling their own gig. So I really had to learn how to do it all myself, which took up a lot of time. So you really have to zero in and focus. But when it comes to monetizing, I mean, be creative with it and think outside. There's 100,000 different ways to monetize.
We're gonna talk about that later, so let's not continue
Yes.
right now.
But yeah,
But
learning all
save it,
those new
save it.
skills, you know, everything that you do at your newspaper job, they're all valuable skills and they're there for a reason. And that's what I did. I learned everything from graphic design to copy editing to photography, all of it, and just made it work in my own way.
Jeanette wants to add a point.
There's another skill that you need to learn when you become an entrepreneur, and that's the skill of managing cash flow. Because even if you are able to monetize your site, clients won't pay you the day that you deliver on something or the day that you get hired for a campaign. And as a small business owner, which is what you become when you become a media entrepreneur, the problem is that you will have certain bills that you need to pay, and then you need to manage that cash flow. So you have to, once you start generating that money, of course, it becomes easier because you can plan. But right in the beginning, when you're a startup, just be prepared that there are going to be several months in which you won't be getting any cash and you will be paying bills.
And companies, it's interesting because we see this with our Latina Mom Bloggers Network, which all of the bloggers are companies. They're all media companies. There might be small media companies, but we are media companies. It's funny because some people are not used to that notion. And they think that, I gave you the invoice, where's my cash? Like if you're at a cash register. And that's not how it is. It's exactly how she's saying. PR agencies, brands, they don't pay you the next day. They pay with, if you're lucky, they'll pay you in 30 days. Sometimes, if you're uber lucky, they pay you within 15 days. But get ready for 60 and 90 days. We've had clients that have told us, we'll work with you, but you got to understand that our pay cycle is 90 days. Can you do it? And we're like, oh, gosh. And we're paying out people, by the way. We're paying that photographer to help do something for our blog or for whatever our client. We're paying for that editor to do that video, and it's coming out of your pocket. So that's an awesome point, Jeanette, as well. I think it's awesome. One of the things that I also can tell you, and so you understand how unsexy this is, because you got to know the unsexy before you see the sexy, is I would probably venture that everybody in that panel has had days where it hurt to work as hard as you did. It hurt. Like you feel your organs are hurting. Did that happen to you? I call myself the prisoner in the cave during the last 5 months. You guys think this is sexy? This is the unsexiest business I've ever done. Really. It's wonderful, by the way. I love to have all of you. But to be able to do this is so unsexy, right? To be able to do a lot. You're out sometimes when your family's with your husband, babysitting, and you know, we are all taking massive sacrifices that are physical, spiritual. You better be strong with your family because this is hurt. Who can tell us a little anecdote about family story? There we go. Kathy.
Okay, so this is what hurts the most is when you work so hard and you put a story together or a package and then your readers don't like it. Or they leave mean comments. Or one time I did this, beautiful ombre dyed shirt, and Michael's picked it up, Joanne's picked it up on Pinterest, and someone commented about my hair, how big my hair was. And it went off on this thread, all making fun of my hair. And I thought, it's about the shirt. And I thought how hard I worked on that and the photography. But I mean, frizzy hair will get you every time.
Especially in Miami.
Yeah. So it's very,
But that's your
take it very
character.
personal.
That makes you memorable. That's
But
good
at the
that's a good
time,
marketing technique she has.
People can be mean, and when you put out your heart and soul into your work, and then people nitpick at the smallest things, you have to have thick skin, bottom line.
Go ahead.
I think also you have to think about two things. One, the physical, because it's true you have to be strong. I always say that you have to treat yourself like you are a high performance athlete. What that means is that every day you have to try to make healthy choices. Every day you have to avoid going late at night, because you cannot, even if down the road you have help and things go well, still the decisions and the important decisions, you are responsible for them. So it's if you have days where you're feeling bad or that you have to stay at home to recover, that's gonna get all your deadlines behind. That's gonna make all your job go behind. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. And the other aspect, as Manny said, is the family aspect. Before you start, you have to ask yourself and your family honestly, is this going to be my support system? Everybody's going to be on the same page? Or is this something where I'm going to feel all the time guilty and nobody's going to be supportive of this? Because your family really has to be your support system in this project. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to work the long hours, to take those trips, and to make ends meet as well.
You know, when I've approached, I've had many business partners through the years. I've had I've had like 18 business partners since 2000, since 1993, 94. And I would say that there was about 18, but there was probably 40 that were approached. And the reason that I said there was 40 approached and they kind of didn't take it was because I kind of knew what the sacrifice were. So I said, hey, you like this idea? Oh my God, I love it, I love it. And then as you went through stage 2 and stage 3 of talking deeper about the sacrifice, it was like, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, I can't go there. And there were several partners that would have been partners of us today for Hispanicize, and they couldn't do it because there was several physical or family or other things that they knew that they couldn't make it. So we're just telling you, it's so not sexy to do it before you know the sexy.
Manny, but I think one thing that is good, is positive for journalists is that we already have a different schedule. We already sometimes have to work on Christmas, on New Year's. We already know that a Saturday for the rest of our family or a Sunday for the rest of our family is the day where you lay down. And for us, sometimes it's a deadline, sometimes it's being on location. So I think the mentality that we have as journalists in that way helps us, because people who are used to working a 9-to-5 job, it's very hard for them to change that mentality. And we are on the go and on call all the time being journalists.
Yeah, and another thing that I would like to share is that one of the things that it helped me a lot is that I think that I'm my own PR person. So the way I work is like if I were working for somebody else. So that helps me to organize, I say, okay, if I used to work for, like Telemundo or whatever, and I was doing that for them, why don't apply that for me? So that's the way that it helped me to organize everything.
Yeah, that's interesting, Teresa, because in my house, sometimes I work out of my house. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm tempted to just roll out of bed and be in shorts all day. And out of self-discipline of in order for me to feel like I'm working, I put on my pants and shirt, and I don't dress up.
That's the way that we need to.
I don't dress up, like anything. Well, I'm a pretty casual guy anyway, but I don't wear shorts in the house during work hours. I wear pants and a shirt, like if I'm ready to go. Because you've got to always be ready to go. And you've got to have that discipline that Teresa's talking about. That you're really working for yourself, but you're really working as if you were working before for somebody else. Jeanette?
Because there's an added thing. You are your own brand. When you're creating your own platform, your own brand, you're branding yourself every single time that you go out, that you meet somebody, that you run into a prospective client or a past client. So in that sense, you can't afford to just be in pajamas all day. Right. You never know what's going to happen. So it's also the self-discipline, sometimes of being self-employed. You have to get into the mindset that, okay, I might be my own boss. I can't fire myself, but what if I really wanted to? It's like you have to change your mindset, figure out which standards to meet, and just keep on going, because that's only going to help you take it further. If you just start relaxing and forgetting about deadlines and thinking, oh, I'll just do it later. Oh, I can always meet so-and-so for coffee. No, it's not going to work that way. You really have to set up the structure, or else you'll never get it off the ground.
Wow. So what is the one final thing? We got to wrap it up. By the way, part 2 is going to be talking about content marketing, which is going to be real fun. That's where we talk about monetization. And part 4 of this session is going to be extremely rich. It's going to be talking about revenue models. And we're going to hear through some of the stories here. But if you were to summarize your biggest tip about the sacrifice, what would they be? Each of you, just one sacrifice. And let's talk about ethics, actually. Let's finish with that. How do you become a journalist who's doing media entrepreneurship, but how can you maintain your ethics so that do you sacrifice ethics in being a media entrepreneur?
No.
Because that's a big thing journalists have, like, oh, now, my God, I'm going to touch money directly this time instead of getting a paycheck from somebody.
I think the key for me is, you have to have the self-discipline, but having a big passion makes it easier. Makes it easier to put those long hours, makes it easier to cope with uncertainty, because you're going to be at a point where, this is your baby and you love your baby, you want it to grow, but you're going to find people on the way that it's going to tell you that your baby's ugly, and you're going to doubt that baby. Is it ugly, or is it a cute looking baby? Or maybe it's ugly now, but it's going to grow and it's going to look better afterwards. So I think if you have that passion, that's going to keep you focused, that's going to make you endure, and you have to be resilient. So I think the key is, you have to have that self-discipline that Janet talked about. I agree with that. But also combined with, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, even if you're disciplined, it's going to show. So you have to have that passion there. It's going to make it easier, but still, you have to keep everything on track.
Janet, talking about the ethics.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Actually, coming from a journalism background makes me a better blogger. Why? Because I know the fine line between what is sort of objective or what is correct to do, what is ethical to do. I'm not going to do a paid review about a product as a blogger. If I'm getting paid, there's a conflict of interest. There's no way that I can give an honest opinion if I'm being paid to give it. As a journalist, I know that. When you're a blogger and you haven't had that training, it's very hard to understand that. And for me as a journalist in the beginning, it was just very hard to wrap my head around the swag that you get as a blogger when you go to an event, because I felt that I was like sort of selling out. But as long as you're disclosing, and bloggers are very heavily regulated by the FCC about disclosure. Now disclosure has to be on the top. Any tweet when you are hired to do a campaign has to have the hashtag ad. Anything you post on Instagram has to disclose that you have an existing relationship with the brand. So in that sense, I actually think there's a lot of transparency. And as a journalist, we tend to be more careful about those things because we feel that there's a responsibility in actually showing that there's maybe a relationship that could be clouding your judgment, but it really isn't, because you are giving your opinion. And that's the biggest difference between being a journalist and being a blogger. When you're a journalist, the story speaks for itself. You want other people to be the star of the story. When you're a blogger, your opinion, your experience, your story is first and foremost. So as long as you have that distinction and you realize, sort of maybe approaching it from the way that, okay, maybe I'm writing an editorial column. So that's my opinion. It's different from when you're reporting hard news. So in that sense, that's how I think that you can keep it sort of clear. Now, when does it become muddled? When you are your own sales team and you have this relationship with the brands, sometimes they'll get upset at you if you're not writing a positive review about something, but you're being honest, and that's what's going to give you your credibility. And with that, you're going to also be trusted by your community, or else nobody is going to really trust a word you write about.
All right, we have one more response. We're going to wrap it up because it's Carlos Viva's time.
About the ethics?
Yeah, you know what? I'll make an anecdote. Somebody told me when I was working with a car company a couple years ago on a road trip project, they said, hey, that's so convenient for you to promote XYZ vehicle, and don't you feel like you're selling out by doing that? And I said, well, first of all, I only associate with companies that I genuinely like. And I think that's sort of the standard that we have, is that, if we don't like a brand, we've been offered, all of us have been offered high-end brands, certain things that we just don't like, or we don't believe, and we don't like those companies for XYZ reason. I won't work with a tobacco brand, for example, ever, cigars, ever. Whenever you are working in this world, you really should associate only with brands that you like. Don't waste your time with anything else. And I think that's one thing that helps build credible storytelling, is if you work in the fashion with those brands. So anyways, we're going to go to break for lunch, but when we come back, it's going to be crazy cool. So we're going to continue with this. Thank you so much. Thank you, our panelists. And we will be back here right after lunch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.